There's one tiny difference that separates normal musicians from the ones who make the sort of progress in months that takes everyone else years. When I get my students to practice like this, the results are immediate. So in this video, I'll show you the one practical tip that you can use right away to improve faster and break through plateaus. Because when you boil things down to what really makes a difference, the musicians who improve fastest simply engage more deeply with the material they're working on. They bring much more intensity to their practice sessions than the rest of us do, and they hold that higher level of focus throughout. And this is what moves you from surface familiarity to deep learning and the path to mastery. Now, of course, you need to be working on roughly the right things in the first place, but once you've got that covered, it's really not so much what you do as how you do it. Now, it's all very well me telling you to engage deeply, but how do you actually make yourself do this? And how do you know whether you're doing it properly or not? Well, I've got one simple tip that makes a huge difference. It can't cover absolutely everything because, let's face it, a fair bit of this does come down to you finding your own way. But the easy thing that you can do right now is simply to talk to yourself. Yes? That's it. But it is more powerful than it sounds, so hear me out. Talking to yourself automatically forces engagement, but it's also an excellent quick check. Just ask, am I talking to myself? Yes or no? Now, this will slow your practice down, and it will require you to think harder, and that, of course, is precisely the point. In a second, I'm going to give you two practical ways to apply this, but first, I want to encourage you to talk out loud if possible. Now, it's absolutely fine in theory to just talk to yourself silently inside your head, but in practice, I find that doing it out loud is a much better option if you're at all unsure whether you're engaged enough. You remove all doubt, rather than wondering whether you might be slacking off. So, at the very least, do it out loud to start with, so you can see how it feels. And then, you might choose to do it without talking out loud later, and just check you're keeping that same sort of feeling. And whenever you're worried you might be slipping out of that deep engagement space, simply start talking out loud again. First way to use this. Mindless repetitions get you nowhere. Real learning happens when you hit all three steps in the learning loop: plan, do, and reflect. But it's easy to start with good intentions and then fall back onto autopilot. So the first way is talk to yourself between repetitions. When you talk to yourself after each repetition, you're forced to slow down. It's natural to talk through what you've observed and what you think you'll do next. And so the reflect and plan steps of the loop often happen almost automatically. And because you know you're going to have to talk afterwards, you'll naturally just pay more attention during each repetition as well. I like to do this by continually and generally just talking through what I'm testing, what I'm noticing. So it might sound something like, I wonder if lifting my third finger a bit earlier will help here. Oh, that's interesting. I really struggle to do that. Maybe if I slow it down and try again, and so on. But you can do this however you like. There really isn't a wrong way. So when you talk to yourself like this, you're inevitably going to engage more deeply. I talk to myself like this pretty much all the time. There's simply no reason not to do this when you're practicing. But there is another option that goes even deeper. It's more powerful, but it's also slower and more draining, so you'll probably want to use it sparingly. If you want to really kick the levels of effort and engagement up a notch, then the second way to use this is talk to yourself during repetitions. Now, talking to yourself out loud while playing is obviously impossible for wind instruments, so wind players will talk in their head, but other instruments, you can definitely do this out loud. And anything you can think of is fair game here, but consider these as starting options. Say your fingering out loud, say pitch names or functions out loud, say dynamics out loud, and so on. There are all sorts of other options too, so I'm sure you can come up with your own ideas. And doing this forces you to engage more deeply with what you're playing right now. It's a great way of making sure you really understand the underlying concepts, rather than just being able to make a series of physical movements and no idea why you're doing them. So while you're talking to yourself, you also need to be sure that you're not making one of the common practice mistakes that will stop your progress dead. So watch this video next, where I show you exactly what those critical mistakes are and how to avoid them.